our moderator, Mr. Bittal Bharadwaj, Group CISO, GMR Group. Inviting our next speaker, Mr. Sandeep Khanna, CISO, UIDAI. Warm welcome, Mr. Sandeep. Next up, joining us on stage is Mr. Subhranshu Mukherjee, Regional Sales Director at CrowdStrike. Warm welcome, sir. And our next speaker joining us is Mr. Vivek Gupta, CISO and Business Continuity Management Leader, Mankind Pharma Limited. Warm welcome to you, sir. We're really looking forward to this session, and over to Mr. Bharadwaj to take this forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I was caught up in a meeting and I thought I'm going to miss it, but thanks for calling up again and again, Neha. First of all, let me thank you everybody for joining in for this wonderful session, which is titled Future of Cyber Resilience, Building Adaptive and Threat-Informed Cybersecurity Strategy. It's a very important topic, and as we know, that in today's hyper-connected world, cyber resiliency is essentially not just an option, but it's more of a necessity, it's more of an imperative which we have to be very, very much aware of and adopting it as well. Now, organizations across the sectors, they've been facing a lot of sophisticated attacks, a lot of threats are coming in, and that not only tests our robustness of our defenses, but also it also checks, pressurizes our ability to be able to adopt and recover from these threats and attacks which are happening. Now, the conversations globally in the sector is evolving from just cyber security to cyber resilience, and an approach basically, when I say cyber resilience, it's about how do we integrate prevention, response, and recovery into a cohesive strategy. Now, we are very fortunate to have wonderful panelists today who will bring in, I'm sure, a lot of unique insights and expertise, not just in risk management, but cyber security and how do you develop the resiliency strategies as well. So we have Mr. Sandeep Khanna, who is CISO from UIDAI. We have Mr. Vivek Gupta, CISO for Mankind Pharma. We have Mr. Subhranshu Mukherjee, who is the Regional Sales Director from North and South, CrowdStrike. I would request each one of you, as you listen to the insights from the panelists, please also think through how can you take some of these learnings back in your workplace, in your organizations, and how can you implement that in your strategies. Again, thank you so much for coming in, and I look forward to an insightful and interesting session from all the panelists here. So with that, we'll start with Vivek, you first. Let's start with the strategy, right? The very fundamentals. Now, what do you think are some of the key components of an effective cybersecurity strategy in today's digital landscape?
Very good question. Today, when we talk about cyber security strategy, gone are the days when strategy used to be 3-year, 5-year. The strategy itself has become very tactical in nature because of the landscape of attack is changing. The technology is moving at a very fast pace. Having said that, the fundamentals have not changed from the yesteryears when 20 years back I was in these sessions like these and today. Those days also the main drivers were the business, the crown jewels of the business. That remains a key component of the strategy. What has changed now is, as brought out, that the resilience component has become more pertinent in the cybersecurity framework. And for that, the recovery part, not only the prevention part, the recovery and response part has become more important. And for that, tools and technologies with awareness in the team and the people's skill set to come up and to take a charge on that situation has become very pertinent. So business requirements remain same. Tools, technology, and people are something which are growing with time. And that's where the shift is happening at a very fast pace. That's my 2 cents here.
I think very wonderful points, Vivek. You're saying the strategy should essentially have a component around the crown jewel. So at the core of your strategy, you should be able to identify what is most important for for the business, right?
Right.
I think second point which you said beautifully, that don't stick with the tool, technology, and people. Keep it very, very fluid, depending on the times, because times are changing very, very rapidly, right? So don't think of, well, I've deployed XYZ EDR, and that's what you have to stick with the life cycle of your contract. If you find something better, which will address the threat which are coming out, which is not being addressed by the current tool, then you should be able to have that flexibility to be able to change. That's what I understood, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you. My next question is for you, Subhranshu, and you bring in a lot of perspective from CrowdStrike generally, right? Because then you have that advantageous position, right, of an OEM. So my question to you is, how would you define cyber resilience in the context of today's evolving threat landscape? That's part one of the question. And is it more about proactive prevention or reactive response, or a balance of both? So there are two parts to the question there.
Right, Bitul. Thanks for the question. So I'm just going to expand on the point that Vivek touched upon. If I were to talk about cyber resilience, there's essentially 4 tenets that come out. One is how prepared you are for a cybersecurity incident. Prevention, of course. How do you respond to a cybersecurity incident? And how quickly you recover, right? So these are the 4 tenets on which I'm going to expand. Now, you asked me whether a proactive strategy is better or should it be reactive. I think it's a mix of both. But in my opinion, a really robust cyber resilience strategy would lay more emphasis on the proactive aspect of it rather than the reactive. Why I say this, we have these discussions with a lot of our customers, and in the CISO community, we are seeing more and more CISOs here in India talk about proactive risk assessments, and our services team in CrowdStrike is doing some great work around that, where we do these periodic risk assessments where we analyze potential threats, what could be the vulnerabilities, and what are those critical assets. Vivek mentioned crown jewels. So what are those critical assets on which the mitigation efforts should be focused first in case of a cybersecurity incident? So that's one area where we're seeing a lot of focus. A lot of robust business continuity planning exercises are being conducted. And data backups and data recovery is an area of focus. We are talking about immutable data backups today in this age of ransomware attacks, where once the backup is taken, it cannot be modified or deleted. So that's another area. Very tactically speaking, another aspect that CISOs are embracing is network segmentation. So that in case of an incident or an attack, the damage is limited to a smaller segment of the network, right? And now if I swing to the traditionally more reactive areas, like incident response. Now incident response, typically the traditional thought process used to be when an incident happens and a team swings into action. But today, people are defining plans well in advance as to what are the roles and responsibilities of each team member in the case of an incident. So that when the incident happens, it's like you shouldn't be looking around as to what am I supposed to do. So those plans are being formalized, they're being documented, they're being put into place. Finally, I'd like to touch upon a topic which is often neglected, that is user and employee training. Building that security-first culture, where the users, employees, they are aware of potential phishing tactics, potential social engineering methods, So that security is not just the responsibility of the IT team or the security team. It is the responsibility of every individual, every employee of the organization. That is the kind of culture that organizations are more and more trying to build. So we're seeing tremendous awareness around this.
Great points there, Subhranshu. If I can expand upon security-first culture. Now, in today's context where we're talking about digital transformation, adoption of a lot of AI technologies across the functions, right? That's where the security-first culture is far more important than just the employees' awareness, really. The way I see it, now, a lot of this transformation or adoption of AI is really happening within the functions and the businesses, which are a little far from the CIO or the CISO's domains. For example, the HR function is looking at tools, how can they improve the employee lifecycle management using AI or the query management. When they're doing it independently, right? Not every company has a luxury of having a CDO available for each business. You might have one CDO at a group level, but may not be available. So the transformation is essentially happening in these functions and businesses which are little far. Because, see, what happens is when you're talking about artificial intelligence, people are trying it out. Not everybody has been able to quantify the benefits. They're trying it out. So the use cases of that has not settled in. And this is where the security security first culture comes into play, because you would like those functions to engage CISOs and the CIOs so that they are not building something in silos out there. Now, you also spoke about cyber resilience, and 2-3 key points which I noted from what you said. One, you said you spoke about network segmentation, and the way I would understand that is secure by design has to be there in terms of the network, in terms of the application, in terms of whatever infrastructure which you're building, right? And then second point which you made, which is very, very important, is that protection, prevention is good. Focus on detection and how would you respond and how would you recover. Focus on backups. Because there are new attack vectors coming out every single day. You may not have prevention for every single thing, right? But when it happens, are you the first one to catch it? And are you the quickest one to be able to respond to that and recover to what has happened? I think wonderful points, Subhranshu, over that. Thank you. Sandeep, let me come over to you, and you bring in a lot of rich experience of a massive infrastructure of national importance, which is UIDAI, right? Now, according to you, what are some of the most critical sources of threat intelligence that organizations should rely upon?
Okay, first and foremost, good evening, everybody. It's always good to be back in AISS. And I would also thank Vinayak and his team for inviting me here to this session, to the plenary session. So just when you talk of intelligence, threat intelligence, so let's talk about Chanakya and Chanakya Niti. So what he says is in his Arthashastra is that if I have intelligence of the enemy, or as a defender I have intelligence, my battle is half won. So that is the essence of threat intelligence. That is what I take it. It is equally important to me as a defender as well as to the attacker. So when you talk of critical resources or sources, I would say it's a combination. It's not single, I would say. One would be the open source intelligence. It's a very, very key component. Though there are validation issues, there are credibility issues in a case of open source intelligence. But I'd like to give you a use case. If anybody has heard of a company called Bellingcat, it's an Amsterdam, it's basically a Netherlands-based company, and it had actually unearthed the MH17 2014 crash, wherein the Malaysian Airlines went down, nobody knew where the hell it was gone, and after so many years, they discovered actually who was the actual, how it was brought down, and how was it tailored. So it was attributed to actually US, that is Russians, that they had brought it down. So it was done purely on open source intelligence. So that is what I'm trying to bring out here in terms of what is the value of open source intelligence, of course, but you have to have expertise to handle it. As for the open source intelligence concerned, you have got open free threat feeds like which you call the OTX. We've also got blog posts, we've got repos like GitHub from where you can get. That is one way. The another source of intelligence is, of course, is known as the commercial threat feeds which come to us, which are more credible, which are curated and available to you. And the third I would say is what, if I say is government agencies and say LEAs. When you talk of LEAs, like in our case, in our context, for a critical sector, it is NCIPC. It gives you a curated threat feed. You've got CERTIN, which gives you a threat feed. Now, these are why these are important or good? Because they are geographic specific, like they're India centric. They're sector specific. So they add a lot of value to it. One more I would say is in terms of dark web. Now, dark web gives you a lot of chatter. So you would know what if there's an attacker and there is chatter onto saying that, okay, something is about to happen to us, it is known to us. A combination of this, I would say, will become the sources. I could say, I can call them critical or not, but I would say combination is what is the essence of having a threat intelligence.
Thank you, Sandeep. While there are commercial feeds available, but there is a lot of power in using the open source feeds as well. And you also brought up an important point, NCIIPC and Certain also provides threat intel and threat feeds. And and it's available free of cost, right? And anybody can sign up for that. While NCIPC feeds might be available only for the critical infrastructure, but certain feeds are available to anybody who wants to sign up with them. And it comes at no cost. And a very important thing which you also brought up, Sandeep, was the regional threat intelligence which comes in from these sources. My experience, a lot of these feeds, they are very centric towards western part of the world, may not be very relevant for India, and that's where, sitting in India, we should look at some of these where it does make sense of the threats which we are facing. Now, good point. Now, extending the same question to you, Sandeep, again. With multiple feeds coming in, and I'm sure every organization is taking feed from open source and some commercial and then some NCIPC or certain feeds, right? So there is an overload of this threat data which comes in. As a business, how would you filter and prioritize the actionable intelligence coming out of these multiple feeds being consumed by these organizations? So any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think it's very close to my heart because it's been about a year that we've been working on this. See, first and foremost is when I'll break it into two parts. One part would be in terms of saying that for the threat, I should know my crown jewels. I should be able to map what are my critical assets, as Vivek had also called out. Then look at, okay, I should also be able to map my, based on, say, MITRE or, say, other frameworks in terms of what are the TTPs, what is the visibility there, and what is the threat feed which is there when I say sector specific. So that is one part to it. The other is in terms of when I've talked about multiple sources, open source, proprietary, the government owned, and as well as, say, dark web forum. So now there is a requirement of centralizing this. So you need to aggregate this. So ideally a threat intel or tip platform is one which is used. You could also use a SOAR for the same purpose. That is very important because you should be able to aggregate this because there's always going to be information overload. So once you've done the aggregation part of it, which post to that would be in terms of giving a score to it, trying to bring in relevance to that score. So what you would do is you would analyze your feeds. For example, a threat feed coming from NCIPC or something may say it's a critical, the severity may be critical, it may be high, it may be low. That is the way. Some threat feed coming, say, from OEM or a vendor would be in terms of a score, say 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. So what you need to do is in terms of now trying to score these. That is very important. When you're able to score it and then accordingly be able to ingest that. Now scoring becomes quite a challenge because that scoring is very essential for the tool to understand, for it to action it. When I just said that when you have to score it, so when it is subjective and when you have a scoring mechanism, so what you have to do is aggregate it, score it, normalize it, and that normalization is itself a challenge. So once you've done that, then basis that, you would say, okay, that scoring could be in terms of its timeliness, its urgency, in terms of the sector specific that, okay, I'm a critical sector and this is a feed which is coming from NCIPC. If there is a thing, I would say, yes, this was more critical to me vis-a-vis this. So once you've done that, subsequent would be in terms of its orchestration or automating the whole thing, is that I'm able to use a SOAR which can probably push that threat, that indicator of compromise onto, say, my security devices that is there. This is one part of it. But the most important element I would say to bring in here would be to have a threat intel team to do this. Bring in that human element, bring in that analyst, bring in the tech team to establish this structure. That is more important. And this tech team or this team also should be involved not only in analysis of the threat feed, but also bringing in a feedback loop to say, okay, was this feed of relevance or not? And accordingly keep grading it and keep curating it and filtering it accordingly. That's what I would like to say.
And if I can add to that, Sandeep, what we have also seen, basis our experience, point very well taken, there has to be a formal structure of threat intel team within the organization. Sorry for that. There has to be a method to the madness of being able to prioritize what threat intel we have to focus on, right? Basis the crown jewel, the criticality of the intel which is coming in, and the sector and all of those things. But what we've also seen that when the attack is actually happening, right? And at that point in time, the real-time, not curated threat intel becomes essential. What I mean by that is, if I quote an example, and all of us are aware of anonymous Sudan attack which happened, I think last year, sometime in April, right? And NCIPC was, as a nodal body, who was informed and engaged when that attack was happening across multiple airports in India. We opened up a channel with them, and as the attack was happening, as we were discovering these malicious IPs coming in, we were sharing that with NCIPC, and NCIPC over WhatsApp, over phone calls, over emails, were disseminating that across all the other airports in India. Now, while at one end of the spectrum, we have this very organized method of ingesting these threat intel feeds and then applying that to a SOC for detection, but when it comes to the actual attack scenario, when it is happening, how the industry and a nodal agency like NCIPC, right, plays a role of exchanging the intel on a manual basis becomes very, very crucial as well. I hope you would agree with that.
Sure, sure. In fact, almost everybody got impacted by anonymous Sudan. And I would like to add something here, is that maybe still I would say that intel sharing which happened was not left to the enterprise, probably had to go one up to the ISPs or the TSPs. If they could have taken action, then it would, because the point is if your pipe is choked, there is a denial of service which is happening. That's what.
And that actually saved the day for a lot of us, right? So moving on, so thank you, Sandeep, for the wonderful insights on the threat intel piece. Moving on to you, Vivek. Now, how do you ensure cybersecurity strategy is adaptable to the new threats and technologies? So your perspectives on that.
So, been in the industry now for 25 plus years, and this is my 6th CISO stint. Other 3-4 stints were more customer facing, and based on these stints, I've seen how the strategies were before 2010, before 2020, and now today. The 4 pillars which have been constant are around people, process, technology, and one thing which I had been professing before, even 10 years back, and I saw in the latest NIST cybersecurity framework it came out, was governance. So in the NIST cybersecurity framework version 1, governance was not there, which got added in version 2, but I had been professing that for last so many years. So those 4 pillars and adoption of whether NIST framework or ISO framework, whichever framework you want to do, that has been constant from the strategy perspective. What the challenge which I'm seeing from that time and now is, you used a word called digital transformation. That has become one of the key things. So if I have to say what are the 3 challenges which the CISO from the strategy perspective today, how to do the adoption and what are the challenges which we are facing is, one is the digital transformation journey, which before 2010 was very restricted to only financial sector and telecom sector. But today it is sector agnostic. All sectors are going through it. And that poses a challenge because as you code digitization, you are creating more attack surface and the cyber challenge goes up. The second part is business growth, organic and inorganic. When you see the M&As happening, there are two diverse organizations joining when it is inorganic. When it is organic, it is still more controllable. Now, in that case also, it becomes a very challenge how to keep your secure posture consistent. So that's the second part in my experience. And third, with the new kind of threat actors coming into the play, the ones which were there before 2010, which were very limited, you could just count on fingertips. Before 2020, still we knew only some of them were there. State actors were not that prominent. And now post-COVID or 2020 onwards, the dynamic around that has taken up by leap and bound. So with these three things, to keep the cyber resilient posture, which is the goal post, and making a strategy to drive towards that goal post with whether good threat intel coming, good technology partners helping us, it becomes a something evolving every day, every week, where you have to be on your toes, running to keep that goal post in front of you every day. That's the experience I would share.
Thank you for that, Vivek. If you allow me to add to that, right, my perspective. I'm supposed to ask a question, but I have a perspective, sorry. So I think from a cybersecurity strategy standpoint, there are two dimensions which should be there when you're talking about how you make it more adaptable to the new threats and the technologies. One is the flexibility into your budgets, right? Number two, you need to have a very strong partners or associations with the partners. Number three, you have to have a lot of external focus. And I tell you why. When technologies evolves, it will continuously evolve. You have some early indicators, but it keeps evolving, right? But threats don't give you the time, right? And to be able to defend your organization when a new threat has come in, when you're under attack, you would need the strong partners, strong OEMs who would spin off maybe a new instance for you. I quote an example there. One of the website for one of the company was under a DDoS attack, right? And that was being protected by a WAF, right? But it was on a shared infrastructure, that WAF. And when the attack was peaking up, we figured out that we need to have a dedicated instance, right? Which means, as part of my strategy, I had the partner who had the willingness to, at a phone call, spin off a dedicated instance for you so that you can take on the extra load which was coming in. I think if we can also add in the flexibility in the budgets, strong partners, and third, the external focus as a strategy element beyond the technology, that's going to be helpful. I thought I'll just share that with you.
No, I totally agree with you. In this journey of 25 plus years, I've had all kinds of attacks, including ransomware, with none other than Black Cat Alpha V also. And you are absolutely spot on to say that at that point, if you have good rapport with your partners, they go out of the way to come up, help you isolate, and come back to your operations immediately. So I think that's like something fundamental from cyber resiliency perspective.
Thank you. I thought I was the only one there. All right. Last question, and we have just 7 more minutes here. So, Shubhranshu, you have to give a really long answer for this question, okay? And the question is, how do AI and automation contribute to creating more adaptive and threat-informed cybersecurity strategy? So, role of AI in this whole scheme of things.
Right. So this is a topic which is very close to the heart of every CrowdStriker because, being the pioneers in the EDR space, cutting edge AI was right from our inception. That was our major selling point and that was our major differentiator in the EDR space. Now, broadening the discussion, we're seeing the prevalence, the importance of AI across all business operations processes. Cybersecurity is no different. I mean, I was just looking through some old data of mine. I mean, as early as 2020, 49% of the cybersecurity patents filed in the world were in the AI, ML, and data sciences space. So now that percentage would have shot up even more. Now, where does it actually add value? So the number one thing that comes to my mind, we all know that the holy grail of any security analysis is the telemetry data, right? Now we have a vast amount of telemetry data available. Who's going to make sense of that? Understanding those patterns, understanding the changes in behavior, subtle changes in behavior, maybe identifying an adversary TTP out of all that noise, right? An unusual login, or maybe unusual data transfer patterns. This is where AI plays a tremendously important role. Sorting the data, analyzing that data in real time, and coming out with results. So that's one area where we have used it extensively in CrowdStrike. Real-time alerting and containment is another area where we see a lot of application of AI. That helps to reduce the response time, contain the damage, very, very critical in a tight situation. We are also seeing a lot of advancement in AI-based source solutions because, all mid to large enterprises are running a number of security tools, appliances, infrastructure. Now, in order to create an automated workflow out of this for containment or remediation, these AI-based source solutions play a very, very critical role. Be it in the data collection, data analysis, the containment, the remediation, everywhere. We see a lot of prevalence of this, and it's growing every day. Now, a couple of cautions, some challenges that people have faced. One is the efficacy of the AI model is very, very dependent on the kind of data you're feeding into it. So the telemetry or the logs that you're collecting and feeding into the model actually lends to its efficacy. And the other area is false positives. We've heard the industry complaining a lot about false positives around some of these models, tools. Some fine-tuning is required. So when selecting the tool or the model, it's very critical to be able to hone in on a mature model, which is tested and proven in the industry.
That's a brilliant response, and who can give it better than CrowdStrike? Thank you for that, Ranshu. So we have 3 more minutes. I'll take a minute to summarize my takeaways from all the insights from the gentlemen on the stage today. I think the first thing was that crown jewels. So we heard that you should know what you have to protect, which is a must-have from protection standpoint for an organization. So have the visibility into the crown jewel, and then you accordingly define your strategy to protect that first, right? That's the first thing which we heard. Then we also heard that while it's good to have secure by design, which goes without saying you have to do that. Things like network segmentation should be there. You have to containerize the areas which can be impacted because of the attacks. That goes as a principle, but focus on the detection and the resiliency in terms of how do you recover fast. And that's where we heard about the backup strategies and all of those things. We also heard that the prevention and reaction is basically, there has to be a balanced approach there. We heard from Sandeep that open source threat intelligence platforms are there. There are a lot of credible ones out there, so we should leverage that. There are commercial ones as well, but have a mechanism to prioritize the overload of the data coming in through these platforms. We also heard that we have to look at NCIPC or certain, they provide these very regional curated feeds. It comes in at no cost. So we should look at those as well. That's what we heard from you, Sandeep. Then we also touched upon the real-time collaboration with the agencies and the industry when the attack is happening. No feed will give you what you're looking for. It's your peers in the industry, in the same sector, who will tell you that, bhai, isko bhi block kar de. No, nothing can match that. We also learned from Subhranshu about artificial intelligence. Obviously, given the quantum of data which we have to deal with in today's world, it's not humanly possible. So to be able to detect an anomaly in the ecosystem, you have to go for tools which are relying more and more upon machine learning. But he also gave a caution about some of these over-reliance. So efficacy he pointed out as a challenge with some of these tools. So over-reliance on automation also you kind of warned about. So just have monitoring or assisted systems out there. Those were wonderful points, gentlemen. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights. And with that, we give 30 seconds back to the organizers here. Thank you again. Cheers.
Well, I would urge you all to please take the center stage. It's time we get you all clicked in the same frame.